The boardroom was silent. The polished table stretched the length of the room, lined with men and women in suits worth more than most families earned in a year. At the head sat the billionaire Shah, a confident, untouchable, the kind of man who laughed at the world and expected it to bow back. And across from him sat a man who looked completely out of place. His jacket was second-hand, his shoes worn at the edges, his tie clearly borrowed. He wasn't a banker. He wasn't a polished executive. He wasn't even supposed to be in the room. He was a single dad. The billionaire narrowed his eyes, amused by the unexpected guest. "And you?" he said, smirking. "What exactly do you bring to this table?" The man took a slow breath. His voice was quiet, steady. "I speak 9 languages," he said. The billionaire burst into laughter, as did half the room. "9 languages? That's cute. But this isn't a spelling bee, my friend. This is a billion-dollar boardroom. We don't need fairy tales." But the single dad didn't flinch. He leaned forward, and in flawless French, he replied, "Perhaps you should hear before you laugh." Then, in Italian, he added, "Some doors only open when you know how to knock in the right tongue." And in Mandarin, he continued, "What you dismiss as useless, others would pay fortunes for." One by one, the languages flowed out of him: Spanish, Russian, Arabic, Portuguese, German. Each word rolled smoothly, like water from a mountain stream. The room fell into silence. Even the billionaire stopped smiling. By the time the single dad returned to English, you could hear a pin drop. "I may not wear your suits, I may not have your money, but I know how to speak to people the way they understand. And sometimes, that's worth more than every dollar in the bank." The silence lingered, heavy and uncomfortable. But for the first time in years, the billionaire had nothing clever to say. The story of how that man ended up in the boardroom was just as unlikely. His name was Daniel. Once upon a time, he had been a promising student of linguistics, with scholarships lined up and dreams bigger than the town he grew up in. But life had its own plans. At 24, Daniel's wife passed away suddenly, leaving him with a newborn daughter. In one night, his life collapsed. The scholarships vanished, the travel plans evaporated, and the only thing that mattered was keeping his baby alive. He worked odd jobs: a dishwasher, janitor, night guard, anything that would pay for formula and diapers. While other men his age were climbing career ladders, Daniel was climbing the steep hill of single fatherhood, alone. He often studied late at night after long shifts, whispering words from old textbooks while his daughter slept in his arms. He couldn't afford classes, so he taught himself languages with borrowed books, free recordings, and conversations with immigrants in the neighborhood. Year after year, he built something no one else could see, a treasure chest of knowledge inside his mind. 9 languages, mastered in the cracks of exhaustion and sacrifice. Not for applause, not for pride, but because deep down, Daniel believed one day it might change everything for his daughter. Still, the world didn't see his effort. At job interviews, employers only noticed the scuffed shoes, the absence of a college degree, the fact that he was a single dad with too many responsibilities. Rejection after rejection wore him down, until one day, fate threw him into the path of that billionaire. The billionaire's company was on the verge of a massive international merger, but there was a problem: miscommunication. Millions of dollars were being lost in failed negotiations across cultures and languages. They needed someone who could bridge those gaps, but no one on the billionaire's team could manage it. A chance introduction brought Daniel in. A mid-level manager had overheard him translating fluently at a community event and suggested giving him a shot. Most executives laughed at the idea, but desperation made the billionaire allow it up, if only to prove the suggestion ridiculous. And so, Daniel sat in that boardroom, mocked for his lack of status, until he opened his mouth. After the shock wore off, the billionaire leaned back, studying him. For the first time in years, the arrogance in his eyes dimmed. "Show me," he said, and Daniel did. He joined the negotiations. He listened, and not just to words, but to tone, to silence, to unspoken respect and pride in every culture represented. He adjusted every phrase to avoid offense, turned conflicts into common ground, and in weeks, saved deals that the company had been losing for months. What no one else realized was that Daniel's gift wasn't just languages, it was empathy. He had lived through struggle. He knew what it meant to be overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. He spoke to people with respect that transcended words, and in return, they opened up to him. Within 6 months, Daniel went from the man in the borrowed tie to one of the most trusted advisors at the table. But the story didn't end with him gaining success. The true turning point came when the billionaire asked him one evening, "Why did you do it? Why push yourself to learn so much when no one cared?" Daniel's answer was simple. He pulled a worn photo from his wallet at his daughter, smiling. "For her," he said softly, "because I want her to grow up knowing her father never gave up. I want her to see that even if the world underestimates you, you don't stop, you keep going." The billionaire, a man who had built empires yet lost the warmth of family along the way, sat in silence, moved in a way money could never achieve. For the first time in decades, he saw something wealth couldn't buy: love, sacrifice, and resilience. By the time Daniel walked out of that company years later, he wasn't just a man who spoke 9 languages. He was the man who taught an entire boardroom the value of dignity, perseverance, and humility. His daughter grew up proud, carrying his lessons in her heart. And the billionaire, he never laughed at the quiet man again. The message is simple, but powerful. You may not have riches, you may not have titles, but the world cannot measure the value of a determined heart, a resilient spirit, and a love that never quits.